Coming up on today's show, we're kicking off August with a tribute to the infamous Route 66 in honor of National Traffic Awareness Month.
Well, maybe you take a road trip this summer and enjoy the open highway. Well, August is National Traffic Awareness Month, so let's take a look at how Route 66 and others connected our country for us to enjoy the freedom to go anywhere just by getting in the car. So joining me this morning is Raffi. Good morning, Raffi. You're back.
Good morning. I am. I even brought my little toy cars from my childhood here.
Oh.
In honor of the road trips and, you know, fun traffic, I guess.
Yeah, perfect. Well, can you tell me a little bit about how Americans fell in love with road trips?
Yeah, think about when the cars are developing in the late 19th and early 20th century. They're this new technology, but they're expensive. And it's challenging to, you know, buy one, obviously, because it's pricey, but also you don't have the same infrastructure, obviously, like we have today. So it's difficult to get on the road. These cars break down. You also don't have supplies along the way. We kind of take for granted having restaurants and gas stations and diners and such along the road. Didn't have that back then. So how are you going to make this happen? Well, what happened over time is that because of the allure of freedom with the car, so for example, you're trying to leave the city, and remember, cities at that point can often be kind of dirty with the waste and such all over the place, it might smell, and the allure of not being stuck on a train's timetable to just get in the car and go, and the invention of the Model T with Henry Ford making cars cheaper, and then used cars, which made it even cheaper, and access to credit, made road trips begin to be more accessible from all that. And when the road trip became more accessible, because now you can afford a car, and now you have infrastructure starting to develop to meet that demand, both with government investment in roads expanding and entrepreneurs saying, hey, there's an opportunity here, and opening restaurants along the way, opening, you know, gas stations along the way. Now you could actually take that road trip, and now you begin to see Americans take more and more road trips, especially in the 1920s, which was a very prosperous, the booming, you know, the roaring 20s, a booming time. And then by the time you get to World War II and the post-World War II, so the next generation, you of course have mass prosperity again after we went through the Depression between the 20s and after World War II. And with that mass prosperity, the 50s and 60s, road trips really start to take off. Think about those classic cars, the big boat kind of cars. And that's how we fall in love with road trips as Americans.
Yeah, very cool. And the famous Route 66. So,
of course, Route 66, the mother road.
Yes.
Right? And now what's funny about Route 66 is that it had a lot more traffic on it than we might imagine. Now, it was originally designed to connect the Midwest from Chicago and all the way to LA on the West Coast. And along the way, it zigzags a lot. If you ever follow it very closely, you can see it on that map right there on your screen as well. And the reason it zigzags is because it's trying to connect rural areas over to urban areas as well. And so it's trying to catch a lot of spots along the way. Well, get this, it became so popular that what happened is you started to have traffic jams. So here we are, National Traffic Awareness Month, right? You started to have traffic jams along the way, and you're having a lot of accidents, believe it or not. There was a safety issue because there was too many people on it, too many cars and trucks and all kinds of things. And so that's why Dwight Eisenhower, when he was president, it proposes the interstate highway system. Now, it wasn't the first time there was this idea kind of thought of. There was Woodrow Wilson before him that thought about maybe we should build a national network of highways in one system, even though we had federal roads of different kinds, including Route 66, but in this more organized fashion. Franklin Roosevelt commissioned a study that put out the initial part of a grid that later became the interstate. They thought about it as toll roads at first, but then they thought it actually can't sustain itself as a toll road. They needed the broad funding, so they made it free to access the interstates. And finally, what was also important in that situation, of course, was the Cold War. Dwight Eisenhower is thinking in the context of the Cold War, not only of economic development, but ability to evacuate cities quickly if they needed to in the context of the Cold War. So all those pieces together lead to the interstate highway system intentionally moving us away from Route 66. So Route 66 had the traffic going on, and we thought, no, we need to move on from that end. Route 66 went through towns, whereas Eisenhower did not want the interstates initially to actually have exits in towns. Now, that's what we ended up with because there was compromises with legislators, but initially he wanted it to be like the Autobahn system, just connecting major cities so you don't have the log jams in the cities. And I think maybe he had a point, because you follow an interstate in the city, you do get the kind of traffic. So Route 66 story and later the development of the interstate system are very much interconnected. They're interconnected stories. stories. But of course, fall into the story of economic development, national defense, and of course, love of road trips in the United States.
Very interesting. So what could you tell us about local roads here where we are in North Dakota?
Yeah, North Dakota is really interesting because, believe it or not, by the early 1900s, even before the road building craze, North Dakota had about 60,000 miles of roads within the state. Wow. Very few of which were with gravel, which would be the nicer roads, most of which were dirt, as you might imagine. Sometimes it was just kind of scraping grass off the prairie fields so that a car can get through deep ruts, muddy and snowy, roads, as you might imagine. You're seeing an example of it right there on your screen right now. So something that might deter a road trip early on, right? Until later it got a little better. But in the 19-teens and 20s, there was this movement for quote-unquote good roads. It happened in multiple states across the country, including North Dakota. And believe it or not, the people behind it were not the automobile people as much as it was the bicyclists who wanted better roads and railroads. There was in North Dakota the Great Northern Railway that went around on a train showing off the latest road building equipment to encourage developing more roads, because the railroads wanted, essentially, they saw themselves as the arteries, if you will, for the delivering stuff, and they wanted veins within that, the roads. They wanted that additional development because it gave them additional business too. The story of a railroad and roads are connected, especially in North Dakota, with the Great Northern Railway. And so in North Dakota, over time, developed, of course, many roads, explosion of roads in the 1920s beyond the 60,000 miles. And what I think is fascinating today, if you want to take a road trip in North Dakota, is to check out a couple of national scenic byways that are in North Dakota. One is a Native American scenic byway, which covers multiple tribal lands and a lot of Native American heritage sites. And the other is a Cheyenne River scenic byway. And that is one that covers multiple aspects of culture, nature, tree lines and rivers, and a lot of charming towns along the way. Both of those are designated as national scenic byways that have national significance in their beauty and heritage that you find. And we got two of them right here in North Dakota.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me this morning, Raffi.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll see you again soon. Have a great day.